special program. Our kids have no idea about family documents. I teach high school students. They have no idea what the Constitution is. They don't know what the Declaration of Independence is. It's pathetic.
First of all,
thank you. Keep our liberties if we don't know what they are.
First of all, thank you for teaching our children. Secondly, with the Common Core state standards, the emphasis in English language arts and mathematics is more critical thinking, requiring students to find the facts and the evidence and to think for themselves. We're in an information age, and there's so much out there on YouTube, on the internet, on the news, what is true, what is factual. And we need to make sure that we are providing an education where our students exodus with those critical thinking skills and the ability to find evidence so that they can make good, informed decisions.
They need to be able to think for themselves, and they're not really being told.
And so one of your concerns, I think, is the test and also the history of the Common Core. In the position I've been in, I've been privileged to be part of the development of Sunshine State Standards, of Next Generation Sunshine State Standards, and the Common Core State Standards. It was a state-led event, and it started several years before Florida adopted the Common Core State Standards. And the purpose of the adoption was to make sure all our students had access to rigorous content. And then, with that rigorous content, they're able to compete against students locally and also from state to state, and we haven't had that ability. Not all the states are using all the same assessments. In fact, Florida's not sure what assessments we will be using. But some states are choosing to build their own. Some states are in consortiums that are building assessments, and the states are involved in what's being built. But we hope that whatever assessment Florida decides upon will be an assessment that provides evidence of authentic thinking by our students. And it's not a cookie-cutter model, and it's not, the responses aren't things that are memorized and maybe placed in their heads for them, which I think is your greatest concern. That they have the ability to think on their own and show their own problem-solving skills and evidence of why they believe an answer to be correct.
They need that, but they also need the basic knowledge. I have students in high school, the math side, who come in and I give them multiplication and they can't do it. They say, "Where's my calculator?" I said, "I got you use a calculator in my class. You should know how to multiply." I can't do this work unless I have a calculator.
Agree 100%. So part of also, I think your question was the curriculum. So Florida is an instructional materials adoption state. So instructional material vendors submit their materials that are reviewed to make sure they include the content of the standards. And then local school districts determine whether that's the material they want to use or whether they want to purchase other materials, or there's a lot of free-based materials. And then how those resources are used is very dependent upon the teacher in the classroom, like you. What kind of resources do you want to use? Do you want to use a textbook that was maybe purchased by your district to teach the content, or do you want to have the students research the latest news on the internet? Do you want them to use the authentic documents that are now available because of the information age? But really, how you teach that content and your expectations of students showing evidence of learning, that should be locally controlled in your classroom and in your school.
Now, is that a new addition? Because my assistant principal last year told me I had to use the textbook. Yep. I teach 6th through 12th grade. They're in the same classroom. All boys, all drug users. Okay. I teach that many different courses.
Well, you have a
So 6th through 12th grade.
You have a tough but admirable
oversight, and I can't use. I don't even have all the textbooks, but I cannot use the textbooks for that special population. But I'm getting criticized on my CAS evaluation because I'm not using the textbook.
We have another response from the panel.
Okay.
And speaking frankly to your concern, since Dr. Meade's arrival, we've written a curriculum, guys, and we put multiple resources in there. We have messaged aggressively face-to-face meetings, town hall meetings, and in addition, numerous emails have been sent out not only to principals and administrators, cautioning them against requiring or mandating certain things. It's been sent to the teaching corps as well, here at Duval County Public Schools, clearly stating your textbook is not the curriculum. Because going from page 1 to page 370 in the text does not in any way, and we will never support that. That is not an indicator of mastery of the standards and the content and concepts in which students have to be able to master. You raise a very valid point about the early literacy issues and the numeracy issues that we deal with. That's not an isolated issue here at Duval County Public Schools. I can attest to that based on my prior employment. The reality of it is, we have a system that requires massive change. We've undergone tremendous reform here in Duval County Public Schools, from the curriculum side to aligning all of our Tier 1, Tier 2, and Tier 3 interventions and our processes. We've completely revised all of our assessments with input from teachers. None of this was done in isolation. We brought in a number of teachers, paid them, spent a great deal of money. We have teacher academies going on now to make sure that now teachers understand what's being taught. But throughout that entire process, we are very good at pointing out that the textbook, again, is not your adopted curriculum. It is nothing more than a supplement. And I think Ms. Tappan did a fabulous job of identifying what additional resources are linked to the new curriculum guides. Now, we have not, admittedly, addressed every single content area. We continue, because that took us a good 6 months to revise the content areas we did address. But we will continue to spend those dollars and investing in our teaching course, in our core, to develop that overall capacity. But I readily acknowledge the fact that you're dealing with students who are coming to you without prerequisite skill attainment, and we are working aggressively to address that. Hence our expansion in BPK. We are now competing with private BPK providers because we recognize the need for early numeracy and early literacy issues. And we outcompete in that regard. Earlier, the comment was made about charter schools. We welcome and embrace school choice. Because quite honestly, every parent, every child should have an option to go to a higher performing school setting. It's our job to outcompete. And we will rise to that occasion.
I would like all of us to remember that we did manage to survive in this country for 200 years without a federal Department of Education.
Again, try to keep it short.
Hopefully it'll be short and to the point. I would like to first thank our representative and our senator for being here and putting on this. I think there's a certain bit of fortitude applied to that. Thank you very much. What I have heard throughout this is curriculum and measurement, and that's the difference. But I also hear a tremendous amount of emotion that's really directed towards curriculum. And curriculum, I can't see how you can measure anything without having curriculum. It's like you're going to go out with a stopwatch, but you're not going to have a race. It just doesn't understand that. So I think emotionally that if you're going to satisfy us and everyone else, that the direction has to also be talk about curriculum and how you're going to prevent the subordination of our children to what we now see. I'm not comfortable. I'll have to tell you I'm a Tea Party person. I'll have to tell you that I'm the vice chair of the Republican Party here in Duval County. I am emotional. These are my grandchildren. My children made it. But we're on a path of really screwing things up. And maybe you're right. But you've got to convince all of these people that there's a difference between measurement and curriculum, and thank you for doing that. But now that you've said that, you've got to focus on curriculum, because that is obviously a dangerous thing. We talk about Muslims, we talk about other ways of doing math and whatever, but you need to do something about curriculum. Thank you.
Thank you.
One thing, the curriculum is decided at the local level. So that's where you need to make sure that you have good communication and good interaction with your local school board, your local superintendent, because that's where the curriculum is decided.
And we'll be paying attention to our school board members as they get elected, absolutely.
But just as a follow-up to what you said, you can actually measure standards without specifically saying a curriculum. You can say that a child can add or subtract or multiply or divide without saying that child can tell you the answer to 2 plus 2. It may be 3 plus 1, or it may be 4 plus 0. That's the difference between standards and curriculum, is that you're not saying exactly what specifically they're going to be taught as long as they can read at a 7th grade level, or as long as they can add, subtract, or multiply by 6th grade, 7th grade, or 8th grade. So you can measure it without having a specific curriculum, which is why we try to leave it as close to the local level as we can, because it's your community, and you are the ones that want to decide what kind of curriculum you want taught in your community. And that's where that whole relationship between you and your local administration comes into play. And that's how it's decided.
Anybody else?
Can I come back, please? Just as you spoke of being able to measure math. Math is a very finite thing. History is not. And I know we're back to the subject, the point of measurement. How are you going to measure those things? The lady mentioned BC and the like. So, and I know you're saying right at the beginning that it isn't everything that's getting to the Common Core measurement. I got it, but it's going to. You don't start here to go somewhere else. Thank you.
Anybody on this panel?
I think you mentioned an issue earlier about the subordination of students and really where the curriculum should take students. And I do, in Duval County, we embrace the Common Core from a simple standard and standpoint that it does increase the rigor. What students won't be able to do any longer is get by with single-point factual regurgitation of low-level knowledge. What students will have to be able to do is apply multiple content areas in problem solving. And that's really, I think that leads to what some of your concerns are. And I think this is an opportunity to have a dialogue. And as was pointed out earlier, that we need to have that open line of communication, because I've heard, and we've started to really embrace our parents in particular to help define how the Common Core will look and feel different in the classroom. Because the reality of it is, parents in particular may feel, and we anticipate some pushback, that parents are going to say, why am I having to help my child with more homework at home? Why is the teacher doing the job of teaching it? Because in some cases, what will happen now is students will come home with very open-ended questions and rigorous questions where students have to filter information first and foremost in an appropriate manner and then be able to apply it in a meaningful way. That whole issue of productive struggle is a positive thing. This process will absolutely better enable our students to be more aggressive and more positive problem solvers, which in turn will make them more competitive. And quite honestly, the Common Core, we embrace the Common Core here in Duval County Public Schools. If we have a concern, this is our only concern that I will share now, that we have a common assessment across all states. If we're going to embrace commonality in the standards that are going to be taught, we need to have a common assessment so that we are comparing apples to apples. If states embark upon a pathway where they create their own assessment, we're no better off than we were when we had the FCAP. And we're trying to compare the FCAP to another state's assessment. Because right now we do not have an apples-to-apples comparison. What is labeled as proficiency in Florida is not the same proficiency standard in other states. And so we need that commonality. And I do believe, and this is the educator in me, absolutely, and as a father of a child in Duval County Public Schools, I absolutely do believe it will better prepare little Freddie to be a more effective problem solver and be more competitive. And he is Freddie.
And I'd like to add